So welcome to the Modo 25 webinar this morning, and thank you very much for joining us. We are recording the session so that you can get a copy afterwards, and those who want any specific slides, we will also share those after the session. We're also live on Facebook, so if you want to find it afterwards quicker than us sharing it, you can quickly check it out on Facebook. So in terms of what we're going to go through today, we're going to go through who Modo 25 are. We've got a few COVID-19 updates, so we don't want to just ignore what's going on outside the window and how it's sort of affecting e-commerce. We've also got James, Dr. James, who's on the call here as one of our panelists. He's going to be talking about going through some of the maths behind COVID-19 and when he predicts we'll be allowed out of lockdown. So that came up over Easter weekend, so that was quite interesting in terms of he was just doing a side project. But the main sort of meat and potatoes of what we want to do today is launch some new technology that we developed called BOSCO. So we'll run through that. We'll do a live demo, and at any point, if you've got questions, you can either ask those on Facebook or you could ask those in the question and answer session on the Q&A here. We've got Abby and Abby online who are going to be answering questions for you. And if they're specific questions, we could interrupt the call and answer them live, or we can hold them to the end and cover them off at the end. And if you've got a particular question, whether it's for Dr. James, our Principal Data Scientist, or Dan, who's our Associate Director of Performance Media, who will both be joining me on the call today. So, and afterwards, we'll also be asking you for some feedback, because we want to try and improve the quality of our webinars, and hopefully you'll find them useful. So I'm going to get cracking, and I just wanted to sort of really summarize who we are, because this may be the first time you've had any exposure to Modo 25, because I only set the business up last summer. So just want to sort of run through who we are and what we're doing. But before I do that, we're going to do our first live poll. We've got several live polls throughout the session, and they're all anonymous, or you can choose to share who if you want to be recognised for your, but it's more just about creating a bit of debate and seeing where we're up to. So the first live poll we're going to do is really around how you currently are managing your digital marketing. So I'll just launch that. We'll leave it live for a few seconds, but if you could just click on the answer, and again, it'll just get us to see what sort of mix we've got, people doing in-house or using an agency. Right, we've got over 76% of people have voted, so we'll take that. So I'll share the results. So currently 25% with an agency, 38% in-house with no support, 37% in-house with some level of support. So that's quite interesting and sort of highlights something that we want to talk about in a little while. So what we're going to go through now is just who is Modo 25 and really why did I set the business up last summer. The main thing I was trying to achieve was my background's always been in digital marketing and agencies. I've also fortunately had an opportunity to set up a cycling holiday company as well. But the main thing I felt was wrong with the agency client relationship is that it was too transactional, and there was starting to become a lack of trust and a lack of visibility. And what I wanted to do is help retailers and brands unlock their data, because I think there's also too much data, understanding which bits of data are actually the most important for your business, unlock that, enable that with some technology to give you visibility on the important pieces of data to help you do better planning, and ultimately over time in-house that, because I believe the best way to manage your digital marketing is to do this in-house. But I think also the challenges and the reason people have been using agencies in the past is because they're unsure about best practice or access to the networks or understanding sort of what the next trends are. So I think there's an opportunity to do the best of both worlds. And again, if you are using an agency, you're going to get a lot of that opportunity to have access to the best practice, but again, you don't necessarily know what's going on. There might be a lack of visibility on pricing, there might be a lack of visibility on reporting, and again, you could then decide to bring all of that in-house, but how do you then know that your accounts are set up to best practice, and how do you know what's coming down the line next? So we've set up Modo 25 to basically create the best of both worlds. So everybody in the business is a senior practitioner from an agency background, and we're going to take our clients on a journey to in-house their digital marketing over time. But it's not just all about digital marketing. Modo is actually the name of an orphan, a 9-year-old orphan in Uganda. My other business, Ride 25, we raise between 180 and 200,000 pounds a year to support over 280 children at One More Child. And when we were setting up our technology business now, we decided to name it after one of the children at the charity. So Modo is the name of one of the girls at the charity, and she actually represents 280 children. And then when we were launching the technology and we were trying to come up with the name of technology, we decided to name the technology after the gentleman who runs the orphanage in Uganda, and his name is BOSCO. So when we're referring to BOSCO, BOSCO is a real person, and Modo is a real little girl in ginger who's very excited to have a company named after her. But in terms of practical terms, what we do is we support in-housing and we provide marketing technology to help brands and retailers make better decisions. And ultimately, our clients look to us to give them support and guidance. So it's not a sort of all or nothing. We will help our clients over a journey of whether that be recruitment, training, support, reporting, or just an ad hoc telephone support service to manage your in-house digital marketing. We've got offices in Leeds, so we're very proud to be a Yorkshire-based company and startup, but we're very much a global business. We've got offices in Leeds, London, we've got a development centre in Prague, and James, our lead principal data scientist, who's joining us on the call in a minute, is based in Melbourne, Australia. So fundamentally, what we do is we do all the traditional things you'd think of an agency, but with the aim of helping you in-house that over time. So backed up by a huge amount of analytics and technology that's bespoke to us underneath our BOSCO platform to help you with your attribution, measurement, and ultimately bespoke reporting. Here's a few clients we've worked with as a team over time, just to give you a bit of reassurance that hopefully we know what we're doing. And it's all about driving online growth. So the only reason we want to work with clients is to help them increase, and again, it's got to be measurable. So we want to measure absolutely everything and then report on the incrementality and performance of that. We're very much a sort of numbers and maths-based business. So we just thought we'd share some numbers around impact of what's happening in the world right now in these strange times. I did say I wasn't going to use the word unprecedented, but I've just used it. But it's certainly challenging, I think, for lots of businesses out there. I know we've got some of our clients on the call today who are in the travel industry. I know they've really suffered. We've also got some of our clients who are in retail sectors where it's booming. So what I wanted to share with you was just a bit of data, and then at the end of that, James is going to run through what this means from a mathematical point of view. So here's some data from Statista. You may or may not have seen this. The one I thought was interesting and slightly amusing was B-days. Apparently people have been buying B-days because they were worried there was going to be a shortage of toilet roll when the sort of panic really got going. And again, I know lots of friends who bought bread makers. I had one friend who I think was going to join the webinar today who bought a bread maker, and then it turned up with all the instructions in Japanese. So yes, it's been fascinating to see what people have been buying. And this is some data taken from Glimpse that Statista shared. I thought we could get into some more sort of interesting Google trends and look at, yeah, so we can see here the when everybody was panic buying on groceries, and we can see now that's sort of tailed off. One interesting thing, again, we can share this, in fact we will share this with everybody who comes on the webinar afterwards. We recently did a survey of some over 70s to see how their internet usage had changed. And what was fascinating is some of them are doing their online groceries for the first time, but have already basically said they're probably going to keep doing that. So the interesting thing will be, how will people change their behaviour? Other things you can see is the increase in use of the technology we're using today, such as Zoom and Teams. But what we thought we'd do is a bit of a poll. So we've got another live poll to see which sectors you believe are going to have seen the biggest increase. So we've got sex toys, bikes, poker, wine, and online prescription glasses. So quite a varied mix, and then we'll share the numbers and the statistics and the results in a second. So we've got over 90% of you voted there. So this tells us a lot about the audience here, definitely. So most of you said sex toys, and then wine, then bikes, then gambling, then glasses. So let's just have a look now and go through that and see what's actually happening. So sex toys has seen a slight increase compared to, and we were referencing back really with the winners we've been taking is since the virus started. So really sort of from sort of having a huge impact on the UK, which is sort of from the middle of March and rolling back over the last 4 weeks. And actually it's seen a bit of an increase, but it's not anything monumental. So yeah, that's however, bikes have seen a huge increase, almost double the demand over the last 4 weeks. And that's both physical bikes, turbo trainers, indoor bikes. Poker has seen a huge increase over the last month as well. People sitting at home gambling. I was actually at an all-agency owner's poker night the other night, got down to the last 4. The first person who didn't get any prize money, so I was pretty disappointed about that. I should have maybe got some of our data scientists to help me out with that. Wine has also had a bit of an increase, as you can see, and actually compared to where it is normally. But what I suppose this highlights is there's a significant demand for wine all the time. And then online glasses, particularly in the last few weeks or last week, has seen a significant increase. And we've also seen that with one of our clients who's an online glasses provider, low-cost glasses. They've seen significant increase in demand over the last few days and weeks because people either losing or breaking their glasses and can't get to the high street to replace them. So if we compare all that data, we can see, and again, but the trouble with this, having everybody on the same index sort of blurs the results. So if we think, right, so really, sex toys is flat, online glasses overall is pretty flat, but poker, it's really these two we want to compare, so the bikes and the wine, and we can see actually bikes is being the biggest growth. And again, another one of our clients, Sigma Sport, who are a bike shop in London, but also a significant online player, have seen huge growth in demand for everything to do with bikes. And again, you can see that we're all liking to drink a little bit more, which you guys did predict. So I think sort of you can have a B- for your predictions. What I want to do now is really go through and work out how can we predict the future. We spend our lives helping clients forecast where to spend their money, where to invest their money to get maximum returns. And what we want, James and I were having our sort of weekly catch up, and I was asking him what he thinks, what's the maths telling him? And he decided to, he actually was already looking at the maths and already sharing and some of the data with us as a team. So he's put together a few bits in a second to go through. But what I want to do is just share a video I found this morning online, which I think really highlights and visualizes what's going on in terms of social distancing.
One, two.
So I thought it was quite good. And it was also nice that the Ohio State Marketing Department decided to use the same brand as ours, so it kept it nice and on brand. Right, so James wants us to talk about exponential growth. So we've got our next poll, which is if you were to save 1p on January the 1st and then double that every day, so 1p, 2p, how much would you have saved by the end of January? Okay, so I'm going to share a quick poll now, and let's see how good your maths is. Let's just get the last poll up. So, is it between 100 and 1,000? Is it between 1,000 and 10,000? Is it between 10,000 and a million? Is it more than a million? I think some of you are trying to work it out. We've only got 20 people voted so far. All right, we've had well, so we've had over 80% vote, and most of you are saying between 100 and 1,000, then between 1,000 and 10,000, and only 12 of you have said over a million. So I'm going to hand over to James, and who's going to come on, and I'm just going to, there we go. Hi, James.
Hi, John. Hi, John. I think you need to turn my video on from your end.
Just do that, I think. I think you need to start your video.
Yeah. So hi, John, and hi, everyone. So the tricky one about this question that John put up is it's really opening. And I had this in first year uni when I was doing geometric series and so forth. And I probably would have put what everyone else put. But it turns out that by the end of January, you'll have something close to 22.5 million pounds if you manage to save 1p on the first, 2p on the second. So it's 21.5. So it's really, you get this exponential growth. And it's the same principle that compound interest works on. The longer you stay in, the more you save. And on that 30th day, when you're at 30 January on 31st, you've got to save $11 million, 11 million pounds. So it might seem easy at the start of the month, but it gets very difficult by the end. So a bit about myself. So I started. I did a stint in academia where I was doing climate change modeling, and it was always based in statistics, and really had a strong sort of liking for data and really the modeling behind it, the theoretical side of it. So I spent a long time in academia doing that stuff, and my PhD was in spinal injury. So this group in Miami had some rats, and they would try and inject them with stem cells and try and regrow motor axons. And the reason that's a statistical problem is because when you observe the response from that regrowth, it's measured with error. You can't always get the same response, and it's very difficult to know whether you've had an impact. But the good news for that group is the people who had the mice, they're doing human trials now. So maybe in a few years, not too far away, we'll get a cure for spinal injury, which would be amazing. Other industries, I worked in a bank for a while doing risk models. Banking's not really for me. When I moved over to the UK and worked for a creative agency and an e-commerce agency there, and that was a lot more fun. But when I moved back to Australia, I joined a logistics company, and they moved about $3 billion of iPhones. Well, they had $3 billion in iPhones at any one time, and they were about moving that around and getting that into the right market internationally. So that was a bit of fun. But when I spoke with John, it might have been 4 months ago or so, back in maybe 6 months ago now, he had this vision for a company that really compelled me, where he said, one of the first things he said about his new company was, it's about people and our clients first, and then it's about the profit. And I think everything that we've talked about since then has really been driving that home for me. And I think it was the right decision to join a small company like this, rather than stick around with, a sort of a soulless big company moving mobile phones around. It doesn't have the same energy and drive that a company like this has. So that's sort of where I come from in this area. So the COVID-19 stuff. So, Melbourne, we have basically the same restrictions you guys have over there, where we're sort of trapped in the home. And I was thinking, what if I go and look at how long is it going to take for these lockdowns to end? So I set a goal for myself. I had a bit of time over Easter, and I said, how many days till we get to 100 cases? I wrote down a formulation for a model I thought would work, and then read a few papers or a few, meaning like 30 or so, about COVID-19 and how the disease progresses and so forth. And then I looked online and I found this model by Imperial College London that was very similar in framework to one that I had written down. And they're obviously infectious disease experts, which I'm not. And I thought, there's no point in me starting from scratch. I can stand on the shoulders of these giants who've built this model. And the way that model works is it looks at the death rates, and so deaths are thought to be observed without so much error. So they're going through a process. You've got to always sign off on the cause of death. So they're thought to be better observed than community cases, because of the nature of the disease. You have 5 days or so where you're asymptomatic and you're not showing. So that case number is always about 5 days behind what it really is. So the Imperial College London model works on the fact that the death rates are pretty well known and uses those to explain community transmission. And the sort of thrust behind the model is the impact of transmission influenced by government intervention. So things like social distancing, self-isolation, and lockdowns and closures. So when those things happen, we'll see the impact on the growth rate of the disease. So one final thing to note before I jump into it is, I've been asking myself, where are the data scientists internationally? Where are the machine learning? Where are the AI? Where are the deep learning guys and girls who are solving these problems? Like, the only technical thing that I've seen since this started has been maps of traffic, like foot traffic. And I really wonder whether the tech companies like the Googles and the Facebooks with like 200, maybe more data scientists, why they're not stepping up into this space and doing more and, providing more of a public good when, things have been really good for a really long time for those big tech companies. And you think they should do a little more, I think, about I'm sure there's some tech idea that I haven't thought of and we haven't thought of that they could bring to the table that could add value to, what is essentially an international crisis. So I guess next slide, please, John. So the question around when it'll end is really driven by this basic reproductive number. So the model that Imperial College London built, it estimates this thing as accurate as can be given by the data. So if that number is bigger than 1, the virus never ends. It spreads forever. It continues. It persists in the community. If that number equals 1, it still exists. You might get flare-ups. It'll have cases, pockets of cases. It might die out elsewhere, but it will persist in the community. If it's less than 1, then we're seeing the decay. And something I thought was interesting to note, and it's the same as that 1p, 2p, 4p example about the money by the end of January. With influenza, if you have one person, they might infect 1.3, 1.4 people. And and those people go on to infect another 1.3 and so on. But after 10 generations, you get one person will infect about 14 others. And that's what we see each flu season. But with something like COVID-19, that R naught, depending on the country, depending where you are, it's anywhere between 1.4 and 5.7. it's like, it's that exponential explosion that you see. So an R in order of 3, as I've got on the bottom of the slide, one case after 10 generations will infect 59,000. So it's huge. And then R in order of 5.7, if you're on the top of that range, it's one case infects 36 million after 10 generations. So it gets really big really fast. And you can sort of have some sympathy for the governments who are making decisions when any decision they make takes time for an impact because of the nature of how long it takes to diagnose. And things happen really fast when these numbers are large. So I hope that makes sense in terms of R naught. So when I fit that model that the Imperial College built, the reproductive number for the UK, it actually tells a good story over time. So the government interventions are working, and the one that had the biggest impact is the lockdown, and that sort of makes sense, and you can be pretty confident that that model's telling us the right thing. And that number, the R naught at the moment is hanging around 0.8 or so with some error, but it's about 0.8. It could be as low as 0.6, but it's probably about 0.8. And in that current thing, you're looking about 30 generations of the virus. So how long's a generation? You're looking at somewhere between 150 to 300 days until we get 100 cases in the UK. So that might seem like a long time, but I think it's important to note that this R naught number can change over time as well. If people don't respect the lockdown, it can increase, and that number might blow out a bit more. But if people really stick to it, that number can decrease more, and you'll see that fall away. And you might find that 150 is not a very good forecast. And it's very difficult to predict out ahead more than about 2 weeks with this stuff. And that's why the government hedges their bets so much, because of the nature of these things. Yeah, thanks, John. Thanks.
No, thanks a lot, James. And somebody did just ask a question, so I'll answer it live, is what does this have to do with bid optimization? And I suppose what we wanted to highlight was how we think and the level of thinking and maths behind a lot of what we're doing. So, and I suppose hopefully you can see why we hired James now. But the big question I asked James is, if I've got an extra budget, where should I spend it? And what we wanted to go through is just talk through our thinking on that. And as of now, and again, we don't know, these numbers were done in January, so this has probably changed a little bit, but 2/3 of all UK ad spend this year will be online. So if you're in e-commerce, you're definitely in the right place. However, from the research we've got, 25% of marketing spend is wasted. Most of that is on inefficient digital tactics. Some of you here on the call will have been to catch-ups with Google. We've even got Google on the call. I did see some people from Google sign up, so hopefully they're here to learn and not to get offended by some of the things we're about to say. But I think we've all been to those Google meetings where Google's answer to most things is you need to buy some more Google clicks and you need to up your Google spend. And we've all had those conversations, both as agencies and both as clients. And that's ultimately because Google needs to drive its own growth. It will be talking about increasing return on ad spend, which often means equals more budget to them, and it will result in commoditization. And later on, Dan, who's our Associate Director of Performance Media, is going to talk through why this is a problem and what does it mean in a practical day-to-day sense. So, and also this will drive the wrong behavior and the wrong metrics. So your FD might come along and say, right, we need to deliver ROAS, because now what's happening is Google are whining and dining the end clients. They're not engaging with the agencies anymore because the agencies are suggesting alternative channels, and people are then not questioning necessarily their Google spend. It's a bit like IBM in the 70s. Nobody got fired for buying IBM. Nobody gets fired for buying more Google clicks or more Google shopping clicks. But actually, it's creating the wrong behavior. If we just target ROAS and we just drive that, we might turn around and we'll just say, right, we'll ramp up the retargeting. And that might not necessarily be the right thing to do. Ultimately, what we should be doing is looking at customer lifetime value and incrementality across all channels. So not just Google, not just Facebook. But the challenge with this is this becomes particularly hard. So where should we invest our money? Should it be, well, historically, most of our money, I imagine now, for most people on the call, will still be invested in Google. but have we actually analysed where the opportunity is in Facebook or in Amazon, or with all the increase in over 70s coming online and they haven't necessarily chosen a different browser, is there some low-hanging fruit in Bing? So how can you predict this? Or do you just do an incremental little test every now and again? What I wanted to do was give marketeers, from an independent point of view, a tool to help you answer this question. Because ultimately, I don't believe Google's going to build a tool to tell you to spend more money in Facebook. I don't believe Facebook's going to build you a tool to tell you to spend more money in Google. I'd like to thank at this point a company called Future Present, who helped us build our slides. This one I'm particularly proud of and very pleased with. So it's a bit like basically being in a casino, and we don't really know where to invest our next pound. So that's been the challenge I set James and our data science team and our technology team, is I want to be able to predict where we should be investing our next pound and across all channels. So currently we can do that across Google, Amazon and Bing with our current version of BOSCO. Soon we'll be able to do that across all of the other Google channels, including SEO. And then going forward, we'll then introduce paid social, affiliates, and then you can start having a full picture of where you should be investing your money. And I think what got James quite excited and the team quite excited, it is very complicated to do this all in the same place and with any level of accuracy. And it's also complicated from a business point of view because there's a lot of different egos and agendas involved in all of this. You might have a senior team saying, right, we want to increase profit. You might have someone saying, are we spending too much? We need to reduce our reliance on, say, Google, and are we actually getting the returns we want? And then you've got people who are the sort of middle management saying, actually questioning, are we spending the right amount of money? Do they actually know? Are we missing out on new things? Should we be sticking some money into Amazon? What's our TikTok strategy? How do I stay ahead of my competition? And how do I keep on top of what the latest platforms are doing? And then I suppose it's the actual specialists who are doing the actual execution work. How do I ensure that I'm ahead of my competition? How do I actually check that all the data I'm relying on each channel is accurate? And I suppose, how do I then make sure that all the different budgets and all the different channels are working together? And what's the incremental effect of all of that across all the different channels? So this stuff's really hard and really complicated. And you're probably living and breathing this on a daily basis and have multiple reports that you're having to crunch together. So we built a tool called BOSCO, and I'm just going to talk to you about the future of the tool, and then I'm going to talk to you about where this tool sits now. So what we want to do is help our clients understand where they are now, help them understand where to invest, help them to understand and discover new opportunities, ultimately drive better performance, help them reduce risk, and give them a level of automation. And this all starts with technology. So I'm going to pass you back to James now, who's going to run through how the actual algorithm that sits behind BOSCO works.
Hello again. So I had there BOSCO as a real person. So that's a callback to the start where John mentioned that he's the owner of the orphanage in Uganda. It's not that we just picked the name out of the air. So the platform is about where is the opportunity for profit. And at the moment, we look at 3 channels. We look at Google, Amazon, and Bing. And for the first iteration of the product, we rely on publicly available data. And using that data, we build portfolios of keywords that are relevant to the category that is indicated at the start of the process. So we ask for, what's your category, what's your market size, what's your current budget? And using that, we've extracted data from public sources to help us answer that question of where to allocate spend between those 3 channels. The next iteration of the product, we're really focusing on SEO. I think that's a sort of a hidden one that goes on where we really need to find out what that channel is worth and whether we need to prioritize it sort of sooner rather than later. I think that's a really important part of the tool that we need to solve next, and shopping as well. So the machine learning behind this and the mathematics behind it is we rely quite heavily on the ratios of click-through rates and conversion rates. So the initial, when you run through it, we assume industry standards, but of course it's going to be more accurate if you put in those numbers that are most relevant to you. And there's a mathematical little convenience function that allows us to get from those ratios of conversion rates and click-through rates to a budget split in a way that I didn't think was possible when I first started. It was something that I sort of discovered along the way with the team, which was really eye-opening. And that gives us the split percentage. And the other side of it is when we relax the budget assumption and say, how much should you spend? Or not could you, how much should you spend? Then there's another side of it to say, we know what uncertainty there is, or we can make a good guess about what uncertainty there is in your click-through rate, in your conversion rate, and how that will impact the budget split. And to give an example, like you can be pretty sure that click-through rates are not going to be too large, and what that too large is might change by category. But it gives us a feel for the variance, and that also gives us a feel for how big the budget could be. So that's really the mathematics behind it. I mean, we can dive into it more, but it's probably the session of a much larger webinar. The AI and the reinforcement learning side of it is in when we're stepping into client data and getting more involved with how that optimization works. Our end goal is a rolling budget opportunity, budget split algorithm, where it says these are the optimal channels right now. It might change next month, and it's about balancing that question of whether to explore a new channel or a new opportunity, or capitalize on what you're doing now. Sort of how to shift spend between those, and yeah, we intend to build in reinforcement learning as part of that. So that's really what drives BOSCO. The way we're architected, I don't want to get caught up in tooling. I think that steps away from what this webinar is about. The back end at the moment is developed in Python, and the front end is a React JavaScript. So it's a progressive web app, and the whole thing is hosted on Google BigQuery, which we found to be quite excellent. It's very fast. It's very good.
So thank you, James. And again, James will help me out when I'm going through and doing demos if anybody's got any questions. One question has just come in asking where we get the data from. And ultimately that's multiple sources, but again, that's from whether that's from Amazon, Google, Bing directly in terms of search data. We've then got access to multiple different data partners. And then what James does is takes all that data, creates into a way to compare the data across different sources and different channels. But again, we can send you a more comprehensive answer afterwards if you want, because you've named yourself in that question, so we will answer that. So how does this work? So fundamentally, it's a paid media planning tool. And where we're going to go in the future is be able to let you do scenario planning, let you compete, look at your competition, use your BOSCO index score to benchmark yourself against competitors and ultimately see how you're getting on in the market. What I'm going to do now, however, is take you through and do a live demo of the platform and show you how we do that. And ultimately, it's about e-commerce. What we want to do is identify the best channel across the whole mix to give you opportunities. And again, there's loads of stats out there that a lot of the search journey now for product search is starting straight on Amazon. People aren't even going to Google. So if you haven't got an Amazon strategy, what is it you're going to be doing? How are you going to get that traffic? You can now advertise on Amazon in their display without even selling products on Amazon. So Amazon's becoming a media partner. So where does that fit into the mix? So we're going to do a quick live demo. Hopefully this works, but as with all live demos, we need to be prepared for... so I ran a query through BOSCO earlier, but what I'll do is I'll step back and go back to the beginning. And you just, again, this is publicly available. You can go on to askbosco.io, click Get Started. I said I was a jewelry retailer. You could go back and pick different categories. In the future, we will be able to pick your domain and you'll be able to compare your competitors. I said my budget's £10,000. My coverage across the jewellery sector, I don't have full coverage. Let's say we're a watch company and my average order value is £60. You could, if you wanted to, input your individual budget by channel. However, we're taking what we believe and understand to be the industry standards. And you could give us, to make the tool more accurate for your business, you could give us your individual click-through rates. Again, this data just sits to help you get the score. And then you could give us your individual conversion rates, again, to help us give you a score. But again, we've got the industry standard ones in there. So if we were just to use the industry standards, click calculate your budget. This is then going away, and this is again given us a BOSCO index score of 63. Fundamentally, this is because we are spending £10,000 and BOSCO is saying we should be spending £22,000, £22,500. We've analysed nearly 5,000, 4,500, 5,000 keywords across that to come up with the maths. If you did want to request an actual BOSCO analysis against your data, if you go into here, click that, we'll go and run your actual data, we'll sign NDAs, we'll get access to the data in GA and all the other data sources, and we can help you understand what the actual specific split for your business would be. And I suppose the interesting thing here, and James, you might want to come back on if you can, is here it's saying the current split based on your actual budget. This is your current split based on 1.5 and 500. This, if we use the BOSCO recommended split, would say 7, 3, 22. But actually, if you had the budget that we're recommending or unlimited budget, this is really what you should be doing. Why are those different, James? What's that highlighting?
So it's an interesting thing in the budget split calculation. And when you have the constrained budget of £10,000, it's saying make the most of the opportunity in Amazon and pull that Google spend back a little bit. But if it's unbounded, it turns out that it's quite close to the industry standard here, which is, I think, is quite an interesting example of the difference when you have a different budget limit.
Okay, thanks, James. Again, you can then go around and see where we got all the different searches, the different impressions and the monthly clicks. In future versions of BOSCO, you will then be able to compare this to SEO and compare it to competitors and future channels. And our vision is to have multiple channels all in one place so you can compare how your performance is against your competitors to help you make better decisions about where you invest your time and also your money. If you then wanted to share this with a colleague, you can just click there and again share these results with a colleague. Or you could go, if you sell multiple different categories, you could go back through and change your category and have another look. Again, this is a free tool for you to have a play with and hopefully challenge some of your thinking. If you did want to use our offer a free report, we'll happily get in touch afterwards and we can do that with you. So let me just get rid of this one. So hopefully that was simple to use, and it's been optimized for mobile. However, it also does work on desktop, so it's mobile first. We're going to introduce Dan now. So Dan, do you want to come on? Let's see if I can promote Dan.
Yep, thanks, John.
So it'll probably be 2-second introduction as well, Dan, how we know each other, why you got involved, and then we'll get on.
Yeah, in the interest of time, I'll keep that a bit quick. But yeah, similar to James, although to a lesser extent, I've got a maths background, so maths and statistics studied at uni. But ever since leaving uni 10 years ago now, I've always been in paid marketing, so starting in PPC, social display, and yeah, I've worked with John at previous agencies, and yeah, joined Modo 25 at the start of this year to head up the performance marketing team. So yeah, I mean, as a lot of us know, paid digital performance marketing, it's one of the most measurable channels there is, and because of this, it's also one of the most scalable. And I think what a lot of companies like to think is that budgets should be unlimited, provided the the campaigns continue to earn that status, and that they're driving incremental revenue from that spend. But the challenge with this comes down to the fact that performance marketing largely is a channel of diminishing returns. And yeah, John, if you want to go to the next slide. Even most experts find it difficult to recognize when it no longer makes sense to keep scaling these channels. And as John touched on earlier, I think Google Ads is the big one. And I think a lot of managers and a lot of agencies in particular, scaling is pushing more and more budget to Google Ads, and not actually testing and looking at the incrementality of that to work out whether that is the best approach. There's 3 stages of diminishing returns, really. John, if you go to the next slide, the first stage is where your budget is going to be at its most productive, and this is where it's easiest and makes the most sense to scale. So I guess the most common example of this is when an account's in its early stages, achieving ROAS, but hitting budget caps. And the simple action of increasing those budget caps means that you're going to spend more, but your revenue is going to increase in line with that. So it's not affecting your ROAS whatsoever. And most performance marketing campaigns are going to spend very little time in this stage, since it offers the quickest wins, and those wins are really easily identified as well. The next stage is where most campaigns are going to spend the majority of their life, and this is the stage of diminishing returns. So a lot of the time, these campaigns will still be achieving or even overachieving on their ROAS targets, but simply by the fact that CPC, CPMs, whatever the metric is, needs to be increased to drive that additional traffic, that leads to diminishing returns. So even if a 10% increase in your bid is going to drive 50% more traffic and 50% more revenue, the simple fact that you've needed to increase your bid to achieve that means you're going to see, in that case, a 9% drop in your ROAS because of that bid increase. Most activity, if it's managed correctly, will spend a lot of time in this stage, and with ongoing forecasting and testing, it's not going to tip into the next stage where it's not actually delivering results on that incremental spend. Which is the third section, which is negative returns. So basically at this point, you've tipped over sort of your peak profitability, and incremental spend isn't delivering incremental revenue. The issue is that it's not as easy to recognize when you've tipped into this point as a lot of people think. Many accounts, and in particular PPC accounts, will move into this stage without realizing it, because an account can still be driving additional revenue from that extra spend, and it can still be overall hitting its ROAS targets, or even at a more granular level hitting ROAS targets. But without testing and forecasting, it's not a simple case that additional revenue is driving incremental return, particularly when margin and other factors are incorporated. It takes a lot of data and a lot of testing to recognize when you've hit this point. John, if you go to the next slide. And not every account is gonna have the data that it needs to do that. And what we're looking to do here is as any account should aim to be, is hitting that point of maximum profit, where yes, you are seeing diminishing returns, you have been seeing diminishing returns, but you've got the confidence that spend is driving incremental return that's profitable. So what we want to be doing is using a combination of first-party and third-party data, industry-level data, and your own performance data to help speed up the process of finding that point. And alongside that, using that same data to help maximize profit with the right channel split. So the two things that's going to help you achieve is, one, stay productive for longer, and that's productivity of your budget, not just the teams working on this. And the second thing is actually maximizing your overall profit with that right channel split. And John, if you go to the next one, making sure that we're hitting that point of maximum profit for every channel, and the right channel split, and that is where overall your digital marketing is achieving its full potential. And yeah, it does take a lot of data to achieve this, but with the right tools, and what BOSCO is setting out to do is help this a much simpler process.
Thanks a lot, Dan. And I suppose one other thing to highlight, and I know we've got some of our agency colleagues and friends on the call. One thing we do see is this also becoming a white label tool for agencies to use for their clients. So this is, we are going to become a sort of advertising technology partner for both brands and retailers who want to do things in-house, but also agencies who want to help identify opportunities and maximize budgets for their clients. So we're very much a technology partner, not a digital marketing agency. However, we have the agency functionality to help people in-house over time. One thing we've noticed recently, and this is just linked to the whole sort of COVID-19 thing, and I've just been fascinated. The previous business I was working with was Summit. We developed Europe's largest CSS partner when Google were fined, and that was Productcaster. And one thing I'm still absolutely gobsmacked by is that there's brands out there still not getting their 20% off their Google shopping fees. So if you are out there and you haven't done your CSS yet, you should. We've partnered with my old business Productcaster, and we are, for investment of a few £100 a month, you could have access to up to 20% saving on your shopping. Just to give you an example of an industry where they are on top of it, if you look at, say, guitars, that's a Productcaster customer there, but you can also see most people are using some form of CSS. So again, it was just something I thought I'd share. If your budgets are tight and you're struggling for extra revenue right now, and you haven't done Google CSS, you should. Right, so one question we had about, just came in about last click versus, James will deal with that in the Q&A in a second, and we'll answer that question live in a second. So we're on to the Q&A. One question that came in was, where do we get all our public data from? So there's lots of different sources. We've got over 30 different data partners. I suppose my 20 years in the industry, we've worked out where we can get access to all the publicly available data. But what really brings BOSCO to life is if we overlay that knowledge that helps drive the algorithm against your actual data, and then you really get some proper insights. James, do you want to just come back on for some questions?
Sure.
Yeah, so one question was, when measuring ROAS, actually this might be one for Dan as well, what measure are we using? Yes. Is it last click? And how does the tool mix match across multiple channels? Yeah,
so the across our clients, no, we're not just looking at last click. There's basically we're fitting a model which is right on a client by client basis. It's a much bigger piece, looking at what is the right answer to that attribution. And yeah, using sort of a combination of these different models further down the line is all going into sort of giving that information on what the output would be through the tool. Yeah.
Okay. Another question we had in is, what's the process to establish the targets for BOSCO for any given campaign or customer? And that was put in by Diane from the Drum. And I think what we're trying to do with BOSCO is not necessarily just hit a target, and chip in, James or Dan, if I get this wrong, but it's more about highlighting the available opportunity that's out there. So the question I've got is, if we did have more money, which channel should we be spending it in to get maximum return? So that's really what we're trying to answer. It's not about necessarily hitting a target, but when we highlighted the constraints of budget, that could give a different recommendation. So I don't know if there's anything to expand on there, James, or if that was...
No, that's right. I think I agree with everything you just said.
Oh, good. I passed. Has anybody got any other questions? I apologise. The team did say we would run over, and I was absolutely adamant we wouldn't. But hopefully, we've had over 60% of the audience stay for most of the presentation. Or well, no, 100% stayed for just up until 2 minutes ago. So I'm very pleased with that. And we just had someone's just asked in the chat, can BOSCO take into account offline purchases? Is there a methodology for inputting that data in the future?
So at present, no, it can't, because we're relying, the data sources we have don't include that one. But if that's something a client is really interested in, there's no reason why we wouldn't look at that channel.
Yeah, we could. The premise behind how we built BOSCO is, in theory, we can add in additional data sources as we get them. So one of the briefs to the team when we were speccing out the product was, well, what happens when we want to advertise on TikTok, or what happens when Alibaba comes over here as a marketplace? Where's the opportunity for our retailers in Alibaba? So it's about scaling and helping you identify opportunities about the next marketplaces and the next opportunities coming along, rather than just telling you what you already know in the marketplaces that you're already operating in. So anonymous question, have any of our clients started to advertise on Amazon? Absolutely. We're running DSP on Amazon. We're an Amazon partner. We do both marketplace and text ads to drive sales within Amazon. We also do display ads to drive sales onto their actual websites. So, and that's across the Amazon piece. If there's no more questions, I'll get to the summary because I'm conscious of time. I know we've got one more question there. How do you consider audience and location targeting? So that's one for Dan and James. This is then, we did talk about then the causal relationship between each individual one, and then overlay with the audience. I think that's BOSCO 3 or 4, isn't it, James?
Yeah, right now we don't have the data for the audience stuff. Now we might be able to make some assumptions like we have around click-through rates and conversion rates, but right now I think it would muddy the waters a little bit too much to bring that in now.
If we had client data, however, we could use some of the knowledge from BOSCO on that client data with their audience data.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it becomes easier as we step closer.
Yeah. Okay. Anything to add on that, Dan?
No, I think that more or less covers it. Obviously, there's more that could be factored in there and that can be. A lot of the audience insights will be taken account for by sort of the large scale of data that's going into it, and the fact that will already account for who your audience is, who your audience should be.
Yeah, okay. So another question, which is a great question, has just come in, anonymous. How does the tool factor in past or future peaks in seasonality and also promo periods, which may things skew the recommendations? So this is something I know we've talked a lot about, James, in terms of seasonality.
Yeah, seasonality is super important for this stuff. So it's something we've built into the tools. So month on month, it'll be, you get the recommendation for that particular month. But the promo stuff it's stepping closer to the client. So we would need to know that data to have a position on it. So it's in the current, the free version where you just put in 3 inputs, which is your category, your budget, or 4 inputs, your category, your budget, your market share, and your AOV. We don't have a thing in there to say your promo periods just yet, but it's certainly on our minds. This seasonality, this time importance side of it is super important to get right.
Well, and I think we were, it's if people want to answer that question, if we got closer to your own personal data for your business, we can use the methodologies and the teams and the tools to look at your data and give you some specific answers to where the opportunities for your business lie. So I think we've answered all the questions. I'd like to thank James and Dan for their contribution time. I'd also like to thank Abby and Abby for manning the questions and the Facebook, because there's been several different questions and admin pieces going on in the background. And I'd also like to thank you all for taking what's turned out to be nearly an hour. So next time we will schedule it for an hour, so we're not messing around with people's days. And we do have a quick summary in terms of what we think you should be doing differently. So we challenge our teams and agencies and media partners on the budgets, explore alternative channels. If you haven't got a Google Shopping CSS, get one. We resell Productcaster and have a very good rate on that. If you want, we could just provide that for you and sort it out. And if you want a free BOSCO comparison against your actual data, just get in touch after the call. And the next webinar is going to be on Thursday, the 30th at 11:03 again. Or I shouldn't maybe advertise that because then we'll have people coming in late. And this is all about the pros and cons of in-housing and how should you and how could you take control of your own digital certainty and future. Because we do believe that that's going to be the best place to drive maximum performance and returns longer term. So once again, thank you for your time, and just wanted to finish with my contact details and a picture of the office dog. So hopefully that makes you smile, and have a great end to the week and a good weekend. Thank you very much.